My name is Bernice, and I'm 62 years old, a retired elementary school teacher from Portland, Oregon. When my only son Jackson sent me that text message, "Don't come to family dinner, we're cutting ties," I felt my world collapse. After 30 years of a close relationship, after standing by him through everything, after being there for my grandchildren since the day they were born, I was suddenly being shut out without explanation. I never imagined that the one phone call I made in desperation would trigger such an extraordinary chain of events. Before I tell you how one phone call turned my family crisis upside down, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever been blindsided by someone you thought would never hurt you. Family meant everything to me. My husband William and I built our lives around creating a loving home. We were college sweethearts who got married the summer after graduation, and we spent 35 beautiful years together before cancer took him from us 5 years ago. Together, we raised our son Jackson, who is now 38, a software engineer with a kind heart and his father's gentle smile. Jackson married Amanda 12 years ago. She's 36, works in marketing, and has always been ambitious and focused. When they first got together, I was thrilled to see how happy she made my son. Their wedding was one of the most joyful days of my life, second only to the births of my grandchildren Lily, who's 10 now, and Noah, who just turned 7. Before William got sick, we were the typical American family. We celebrated holidays together, took summer vacations to the Oregon coast, and gathered for birthdays and school events. William was the kind of father who never missed a Little League game or dance recital. He taught Jackson how to fish, how to change a tire, and most importantly, how to be a good man. I could see William's influence in how Jackson parented his own children, and it filled me with pride. When William was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, our family faced its first real crisis. The 18 months of his illness were brutal. Jackson stepped up in ways that still bring tears to my eyes when I think about it. He would come by after work to help with William's care, take us to doctor appointments, and handle paperwork that I was too overwhelmed to manage. He made sure I ate and slept, bringing groceries, and sometimes just sitting with me while I cried. After William passed, Jackson was my rock. He made sure I wasn't alone for too long, calling daily and bringing the family over at least once a week. That's when our Sunday dinner tradition really became sacred. Every week they would come over around 4 o'clock. Lily would help me bake dessert. Noah would set the table in his own creative way, and Jackson would grill or help me with the main course while Amanda prepared a salad or side dish. Those dinners were my lifeline after losing William. The house that had suddenly become so quiet would fill with laughter and conversation again. We would share stories about our week, the children would show me their school projects, and we'd sometimes look through old family albums, keeping William's memory alive for the kids. When I retired from teaching second grade 2 years ago after 35 years in the classroom, I had even more time to spend with my grandchildren. I'd pick them up from school 2 days a week, help with homework, and attend their activities. Lily and I shared a love for baking. We made cookies with secret recipes that she claimed were famous in 3 households. Noah and I built model rockets and conducted science experiments in the backyard. He once said I was the coolest grandma in Oregon after we made a volcano that erupted actual red foam. I was always careful about being helpful without overstepping. I knew Amanda valued her role as mother and homemaker alongside her career, so I tried to support without interfering. I'd bring over home-cooked meals when they had busy weeks, but was careful not to offer unsolicited parenting advice. When I babysat, I followed their rules about screen time and bedtime routines. I wanted to be a help, never a burden. For almost 5 years after William's death, this arrangement worked beautifully. We were a tight-knit family supporting each other through life's ups and downs. Jackson got a promotion. Amanda started working remotely 3 days a week to have more time with the kids. Lily won her school spelling bee, and Noah joined a soccer team. I was there for all of it, cheering them on, taking pictures, being the proud grandmother. Looking back now, I can see that things started changing about a month before that devastating text. Jackson's calls became shorter, sometimes going straight to voicemail. Plans were canceled last minute. When we did have our Sunday dinners, there was a new tension in the air. Amanda seemed distracted, checking her phone frequently. Jackson would change the subject when I asked about work or their plans for the summer. I dismissed these changes, making excuses in my mind. They were busy. Work was stressful. The children had more activities than ever. I never imagined that something sinister was happening behind the scenes, something that would temporarily tear our family apart and put everything we'd built at risk. It was a Tuesday morning when everything fell apart. I was planning my weekly trip to the local farmer's market to buy fresh ingredients for our upcoming Sunday dinner. I was thinking about making William's favorite pot roast, a recipe that Lily and Noah had grown to love as well. My phone buzzed with a text message, and I smiled, thinking it might be Jackson confirming our plans. Instead, the words on the screen hit me like a physical blow. Don't come to family dinner anymore. Amanda and I have decided we need space. We're cutting ties for a while. Please respect our decision. I stared at my phone, sure I had misread. My hands started trembling so badly, I had to set the phone down on the kitchen counter. I felt dizzy and grabbed the edge of the counter for support. This couldn't be real. There must be some mistake. Maybe someone had Jackson's phone. Maybe it was a cruel joke. I immediately tried calling him, but the call went straight to voicemail. Jackson, it's Mom. I just got your text. There must be some misunderstanding. Please call me back as soon as you can. Next, I tried Amanda with the same result. Straight to voicemail. I left a similar message, my voice cracking, despite my efforts to sound calm. As the minutes ticked by without a response, panic gave way to a flood of confusion and questions. What had happened? What had I done wrong? Was it something I said? Something I did. I mentally reviewed our recent interactions, looking for clues. Last Sunday's dinner had seemed normal, if a bit quieter than usual. Jackson had been preoccupied, but he'd hugged me warmly when they left. Lily had shown me her art project, and Noah had asked if we could finish our model rocket next weekend. Nothing had indicated that it would be our last family dinner. I texted Jackson again. Honey, I don't understand. Have I done something to upset you? Please talk to me. An hour later, the reply came. This is our decision. Please respect it. The coldness of those words from my only child sent a chill through me that settled deep in my bones. This wasn't just about Sunday dinners. I was being cut off from my son, my daughter-in-law, and most heartbreakingly, my grandchildren. The children I'd helped raise, who I loved with every fiber of my being. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, moving from room to room in my house, a house that suddenly felt emptier than it ever had, even in those first terrible days after William died. Every corner held memories of my family. The height marks on the wall in the kitchen, Lily's drawings, magnetized to the refrigerator, Noah's toy cars that always seemed to find their way under the couch. Night came and I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tears streaming silently down my face. What would I tell my friends who knew how close we were? How would I explain to Lily and Noah why Grandma suddenly disappeared from their lives? And most importantly, why was this happening? Morning arrived after a sleepless night, and with it, a strange calm born of emotional exhaustion. I picked up my phone and sent one final text. Got it. I respect your decision. What else could I say? I couldn't force my son to let me into his life if he'd decided to shut me out. I couldn't demand an explanation he clearly wasn't willing to give. All I could do was respect his wishes and hope that one day he would change his mind. But as I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at the family photos that covered my refrigerator, I felt something other than resignation stirring within me. Something wasn't right about this situation. The Jackson I knew, the son I raised, wouldn't cut me off without reason. There was more to this story, and somehow I needed to find out what. I sat in my silent kitchen the next morning, coffee growing cold in my mug, staring at the family photos that seemed to mock me from every surface. Lily's gap-toothed smile from her school picture last year. Noah proudly holding a trophy from his science fair. Jackson and Amanda on their wedding day, so young and full of hope. William's gentle face watching over us all from the largest frame. The emptiness of the house pressed in around me like a physical weight. I had faced loneliness after William died, but this was different. This was a rejection that cut to the core of who I was as a mother and grandmother. Suddenly, I knew I couldn't face this alone. I needed to talk to someone who knew our family, someone who might offer perspective or at least a shoulder to cry on. Without overthinking it, I reached for my phone and dialed Patricia, William's younger sister, who lived in Seattle. Patricia and I had always been close, more like sisters than in-laws. After William passed, our bond had grown even stronger. She'd been a pillow of support during the darkest days of grief, and she knew Jackson as well as anyone, having been a present and loving aunt throughout his life. "Bernice," Patricia answered on the second ring. "What a nice surprise. How are you?" At the sound of her warm, familiar voice, the dam broke. "Patricia," I managed to say before a sob escaped. "Something terrible has happened." "What is it? Are you hurt? Are the kids okay?" Alarm filled her voice. I took a deep breath and explained about the text message, reading it to her word for word. I told her about my attempts to call the cryptic responses and the final text I'd sent that morning. There was a long pause after I finished speaking. When Patricia finally responded, her voice was thoughtful rather than purely sympathetic, which surprised me. "This doesn't sound like Jackson at all," she said slowly. "Have there been any other strange behaviors lately?" "They've been a bit distant for the last month or so," I admitted. "Shorter phone calls, canceled plans, but nothing that would explain this." Patricia was quiet again, then said, "You know, Jackson called me about 2 weeks ago, which was unusual in itself. He mentioned something about getting family financial advice and some exciting investment opportunities. It struck me as odd at the time, especially when he asked if I'd received any inheritance from my husband's family recently. A small flicker of something not quite hope, but perhaps understanding sparked within me. "That is strange," I agreed. "He's never been one to discuss money much, certainly not investments." "Bernice," Patricia said carefully, "I don't want to alarm you, but is it possible this isn't just about needing space? Could someone be influencing Jackson and Amanda?" The question hung in the air between us, opening a possibility I hadn't considered. "What do you mean?" "There have been rumors in my community about a so-called wealth advisor who's been working with several families. A friend in my book club was concerned about her daughter's family suddenly making dramatic financial changes and pulling away from relatives who expressed concern." My mind raced back through recent conversations. Amanda did mention a new financial advisor a couple of months ago, someone named Maxwell, who she said was changing their lives. I didn't think much of it at the time. "Maxwell," Patricia's voice sharpened. "Maxwell Reynolds. I'm not sure of his last name," I said. "Why do you know him?" "No, but the name sounds familiar from what my friend was saying." Patricia paused. "Listen, Bernice let me make a few calls. I still have connections from my banking days, and I can ask some discreet questions. In the meantime, you shouldn't be alone. Is Susan still your neighbor? The one with the ginger cat?" I nodded, then remembered she couldn't see me. "Yes, she's still next door." "Call her, have her come over. I'll call you back as soon as I learn anything." After hanging up, I followed Patricia's advice and called Susan. My neighbor of 15 years arrived 30 minutes later with a casserole and a bottle of wine, despite it being barely noon. She didn't ask too many questions, seeming to sense that I wasn't ready to explain. Instead, she put on old episodes of The Golden Girls and sat with me, a comforting presence as the hours ticked by. Every few minutes, I checked my phone, waiting for Patricia to call back. Minutes stretched into hours, and the weight of waiting became almost unbearable. What if Patricia found nothing? What if this really was simply my son deciding I was no longer welcome in his life? The thought made my chest tighten with a grief that felt almost as sharp as when I'd lost William. But somewhere beneath the grief, a small voice kept insisting that something wasn't right. The son I raised would never do this without explanation. The family we had built wouldn't crumble without reason. I held on to that belief as the afternoon light faded into evening, waiting for the call that might help me make sense of the senseless. It was nearly 8 in the evening when my phone finally rang. I lunged for it, nearly knocking over my wineglass in the process. Susan had gone home an hour earlier, promising to check on me in the morning. "Patricia," I answered, not bothering to hide the anxiety in my voice. "Bernice," my sister-in-law's voice was tense, urgent. "I've learned some disturbing things. Are you sitting down?" I sank into my armchair, heart pounding. "I am now. What is it?" "Maxwell Reynolds is under investigation in 3 states for running investment schemes targeting families," Patricia said without preamble. "My old colleague George works for a bank that's cooperating with authorities. He couldn't give me all the details, but what he did share is alarming." My free hand clutched the arm of the chair. "What kind of scheme?" "He specifically targets families with inheritance money or recent windfalls," Patricia explained. "But here's what connects to your situation. His pattern includes convincing families to cut ties with elder relatives who might interfere with their financial freedom. A cold realization washed over me. Jackson received an inheritance when William passed. It wasn't enormous, but it was significant. Exactly, Patricia confirmed. And have you noticed any changes in their lifestyle recently? Any big purchases or talk of investments? My mind raced back through recent months. They bought a new SUV in March. Amanda mentioned home renovations, and yes, there was talk about some investment with exponential returns that would help pay for the kids' college. Patricia's sigh was heavy with concern. Classic signs. George says Maxwell creates dependency by isolating his clients from family members who might question his advice. He convinces them that parents or older relatives are holding them back financially, that they're stuck in old-fashioned thinking. But Jackson is smart, I protested. He works in technology. He wouldn't fall for a scam. Intelligence is no protection against sophisticated manipulation, Patricia said gently. George said Maxwell's company isn't properly licensed, and he's already left financial devastation in Colorado and Arizona. 3 other families in Portland have cut ties with parents under similar circumstances in the past year. My teacher's instinct to protect kicked in immediately. We need to warn them. I have to call Jackson right now. No, Patricia said firmly. Not yet. George is putting me in touch with someone from the fraud division tomorrow morning. If we tip off Jackson now, he might alert Maxwell, who could disappear with their money or pressure them further. We need to let the authorities handle this the right way. I felt sick with the realization that my son and his family might be in real danger, not just financial, but emotional as well. What if they've already given him their savings? William's inheritance was meant for the kids' education. That's why we need to act quickly but carefully, Patricia assured me. I'm booking a flight to Portland tonight. I'll be there by morning and we'll face this together. After hanging up, I paced my living room, the knowledge of what might be happening to my family churning inside me like acid. My son wasn't rejecting me. He was being manipulated by someone who had specifically targeted him because of his inheritance and used calculated techniques to isolate him from me. The relief of understanding was immediately overshadowed by fear for my family's well-being. Sleep was impossible. I spent the night researching investment scams online, each article making me more certain that Patricia's suspicions were correct. By morning, I had compiled a folder of information about similar schemes and warning signs. Patricia arrived at 10 looking tired from the early flight but determined. She'd barely set down her bag when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Winters. This is Detective Morgan from the Portland Police Bureau's Financial Crimes Unit. Patricia Henderson gave me your number regarding a situation with your son's family. My hand trembled as I put the call on speaker so Patricia could hear. Yes, Detective. Thank you for calling. I understand this is difficult, but I need to ask you some questions about your son, his wife, and their connection to Maxwell Reynolds. For the next 30 minutes, I answered his questions as clearly as I could, describing the text message, the recent changes in behavior, and the financial moves I was aware of. What you're describing matches other cases we're investigating, Detective Morgan confirmed. Mrs. Winters. I know this is hard to hear, but your family may be in serious financial danger. Reynolds has a pattern of pressuring clients to liquidate legitimate investments for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that turns out to be nothing but smoke and mirrors. What can we do? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. We need about 24 to 48 hours to gather final evidence for an arrest warrant, he explained. In the meantime, it's crucial you don't alert your son or daughter-in-law. If Reynolds suspects authorities are closing in, he might flee or move money offshore. I closed my eyes, the weight of this knowledge almost unbearable. So, I have to do nothing while my family is being victimized. Not nothing, Detective Morgan said. We need photos of your family to ensure their safety during the operation, and there's something else you can do. Prepare for what happens after. These situations can be incredibly traumatic for families. When the truth comes out, your son and daughter-in-law will need support, not judgment. After the call ended, Patricia squeezed my hand. He's right. We need to be ready to help them pick up the pieces. That afternoon became a flurry of careful, quiet activity. I provided recent photos of Jackson, Amanda, Lily, and Noah to Detective Morgan. Patricia made calls to several people who could help Jackson's childhood friend Michael, who lived nearby. Amanda's sister Jennifer, who had apparently also been concerned about recent changes, and my neighbor Susan, who agreed to help prepare my home as a safe space for when the truth came out. Maxwell has convinced them to liquidate their investments for something big happening this week, Michael told us when he arrived. Jackson mentioned a meeting on Thursday to secure their financial future. He was excited but secretive about the details. Amanda's sister Jennifer confirmed similar concerns. Amanda's been different lately, distant. When I questioned their new lifestyle, she said I didn't understand modern wealth creation and that their advisor was showing them things most people were too risk-averse to try. With each new piece of information, the picture became clearer and more frightening. Maxwell Reynolds had systematically isolated my family, convinced them to distrust anyone who might question his advice, and was now positioned to take their money, perhaps everything they had. Detective Morgan set up subtle surveillance to ensure the family's safety while the investigation progressed. Meanwhile, our small support team prepared for every possible scenario. We agreed on a unified, non-judgmental approach, recognizing that Jackson and Amanda would likely feel embarrassed and defensive when the truth was revealed. The wait was excruciating. Every hour that passed was an hour closer to my family potentially losing everything. I kept checking my phone, though I knew Jackson wouldn't call and I shouldn't call him. The silence was deafening, a void filled only by my racing thoughts and worst fears. 22 hours after my first call to Patricia, the longest 22 hours of my life, I found myself sitting in my living room surrounded by people who cared about my family, waiting for news that would change everything. Detective Morgan's call came exactly 22 hours after I'd first reached out to Patricia. Our small group fell silent as I answered on speakerphone. "Mrs. Winters?" His voice was steady professional. "We've moved forward. Reynolds is being taken into custody now. We have officers at your son's home explaining the situation to them." My heart leaped into my throat. "Are they okay? The children?" "Everyone is safe," he assured me. "This is going to be a shock for them. They'll need your support, but give them a little time to process what's happening. We'll let you know when it's appropriate to make contact." After thanking him, I looked at the concerned faces around me. "Now we wait," I said, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm of emotions inside me. The next hour crawled by in tense silence. I paced the living room, too anxious to sit. Patricia made coffee, no one drank. Michael and Jennifer spoke in low voices by the window. At some point, I realized I hadn't checked my phone in a while. Pulling it from my pocket, I discovered to my horror that it was in airplane mode, likely from when I'd been fiddling with it earlier in my distress. When I turned airplane mode off, my phone erupted with notifications. 99 missed calls, dozens of text messages, voicemails filling my inbox. "Oh my God," I breathed, staring at the screen in disbelief. The most recent text from Jackson read, "Mom, please call us. We've been trying to reach you for hours. The police are here. Maxwell was arrested. We've been such fools. Please call." There were earlier messages, too, ranging from confusion to apology to desperation. "Mom, something crazy is happening. The police say Maxwell was scamming us. I'm so sorry for that text. He convinced us you were financially controlling us. Please call. We need you." From Amanda. "Bernice, we've been such fools. Please forgive us. We almost gave him everything." My hands shook so badly I could barely dial. Jackson answered on the first ring. "Mom." His voice broke on that single word, thick with emotion. "Jackson," I managed, tears flowing freely now. "I'm here. I just saw your messages. Mom, I'm so sorry," he sobbed. "We were so stupid. Maxwell, he made us think." "It's okay," I said, though nothing was okay yet. "I'm coming over. We'll talk about everything then." "The kids want to talk to you," he said. "They don't understand what's happening." Lily's small voice came on the line. "Grandma, are you coming to see us? Daddy's crying and there are police officers here." "Yes, sweetheart, I'm coming right now." I promised, motioning to Patricia and the others, that we needed to leave immediately. The drive to their house was tense, my mind racing with what I would say, how I could help them through this, without adding to their shame and pain. Patricia drove while I tried to compose myself to be the rock my family would need. When we pulled up to their modest two-story home, Jackson was waiting in the driveway. My tall, strong son looked broken, his face tear-streaked and pale. The moment I stepped out of the car, he moved toward me with uncertain steps, as if afraid I might reject him. Without a word, I opened my arms. He fell into them like he used to as a child after a nightmare, his body shaking with silent sobs. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered against my shoulder. "I know," I said, holding him tight. "I know." Inside the scene was chaotic, yet subdued. 2 police officers were still there speaking quietly with Amanda in the kitchen. The children sat on the couch, confused and frightened. When they saw me, they ran over, wrapping their arms around my waist. "Grandma, are you coming back to our dinners?" Noah asked his innocent question, bringing fresh tears to my eyes. "Of course I am, sweetie," I assured him, stroking his hair. Detective Morgan nodded to me from across the room, a silent acknowledgement that they had arrived just in time. Later, I would learn that Maxwell had been in their home conducting what he called a final investment meeting when the police arrived. He had been minutes away from receiving access to their accounts. As the officers prepared to leave, one of them handed Jackson some paperwork. "You'll need to make a formal statement tomorrow. This explains everything about the process and support services available to victims." Victims. The word hung heavy in the air after they left. Amanda finally approached me, her face ravaged by tears and shame. "Bernice," she began, then faltered. I reached for her hand. "Let's sit down, all of us, and you can tell me everything." Around their dining room table, the story unfolded. Maxwell had approached them at a school fundraiser, charming and confident, offering financial advice that seemed legitimate at first. Small successes with initial investments built their trust. Then came the isolation tactics. "He showed us articles about toxic family financial dynamics," Jackson explained, unable to meet my eyes. He said older generations often hold back younger ones with outdated thinking about money. He had testimonials from other families who had broken free from parents who were financially controlling them. "When I mentioned your concerns about our new spending, he said that was a classic control tactic," Amanda added, wiping fresh tears. "He made it seem like cutting ties with you was necessary for our financial independence. He even suggested it would be better for the children not to have your scarcity mindset influencing them." "We were such fools," Jackson said, his voice hollow with self-recrimination. "No," I said firmly. "You were victims of a professional manipulator who knew exactly which buttons to push, which fears to exploit." Patricia, who had been quietly observing, added, "This has happened to many families, Jackson. Educated, intelligent people. Maxwell is being investigated in multiple states. You're not alone in this." As the evening progressed, Detective Morgan called with an update. They had found evidence that Maxwell had defrauded at least 12 other families in Portland alone. Many had lost their entire savings. Jackson and Amanda had been caught just in time. "We would have given him everything on Thursday," Amanda whispered. "Our savings, Jackson's inheritance, even a second mortgage he convinced us to take out. He said it was the opportunity of a lifetime." Looking at their faces, I knew that judgment was the last thing they needed. Whatever anger or hurt I had felt was overshadowed by gratitude that they had been spared the worst, and by determination to help them rebuild what had been damaged both financially and emotionally. "We'll get through this," I promised them. "Together, the way families should." As the children were finally put to bed, exhausted by the day's confusion and emotion, Jackson pulled me aside. "How did you know, Mom? How did the police find out about Maxwell?" I smiled softly. "I made one phone call to someone who cared enough to ask questions. Sometimes that's all it takes to uncover the truth." The days and weeks that followed were difficult but healing. The shame and embarrassment Jackson and Amanda felt was profound, but with time and support they began to recover from the emotional manipulation they had endured. We started family therapy sessions with a counselor who specialized in helping victims of fraud. Dr. Larson helped them understand the sophisticated psychological tactics Maxwell had used, easing some of their self-blame. "Con artists like Reynolds study human psychology," she explained during one session. They identify vulnerabilities often related to hopes and dreams for family and exploit them methodically. This isn't about intelligence or education. It's about human trust being weaponized against you. Hearing this helped, but the road to recovery wasn't quick or easy. There were nights when Jackson would call me, still wrestling with how he could have been so deceived, how he could have doubted me after all our years of love and support. "I keep thinking about that text I sent you," he confessed one evening. "How hurt you must have been. I don't know if I can ever forgive myself for that. But I've already forgiven you," I told him. "And now you need to forgive yourself." Financially, they were lucky compared to some of Maxwell's other victims. Because of the timing of the arrest, they had lost some money, but not everything. The second mortgage could be canceled, though there were penalties. The inheritance was still mostly intact. They would have to scale back some of their recent lifestyle upgrades, but they weren't ruined. As we worked to rebuild our family bonds, something unexpected happened. Jackson and Amanda joined a task force created to help educate others about similar scams. Turning their painful experience into a way to help others became part of their healing process. "If we can prevent even one family from going through this," Amanda said, "then something good will have come from our mistake." Our Sunday dinner tradition resumed now with an even deeper appreciation of its value. The first one, after the arrest, was emotional for everyone. I brought William's favorite apple pie for dessert, and we all held hands around the table before eating a moment of silent gratitude for the family bond that had ultimately saved them. I temporarily moved into their guest room to help the family recover emotionally. The children especially needed reassurance that their world was stable again. Lily had nightmares about bad men taking Daddy away, and Noah became clingy, afraid people he loved would suddenly disappear. My presence helped restore their sense of security and normalcy. 6 months after the arrest, Maxwell Reynolds pleaded guilty to multiple fraud charges. The evidence against him was overwhelming, with dozens of victims coming forward once the case became public. He would serve a significant prison sentence and was ordered to pay restitution, though most of his victims would never recover all they had lost. Our family attended the sentencing together, a final step in finding closure. Watching Maxwell led away in handcuffs, I felt no joy, only relief that he could no longer harm other families. That evening, as we sat together in Jackson and Amanda's backyard, watching Lily and Noah play with their new puppy, a symbol of the family's healing and renewed commitment to joy, Jackson took my hand. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what happened," he said, "about how easily our family was almost destroyed. But it wasn't," I reminded him. "We're stronger now." "Because of you," he said. "Because you didn't give up on us even when we pushed you away, because you looked deeper when something felt wrong instead of just accepting it." His words touched me deeply. The truth was, our experience had taught us all valuable lessons about family bonds, about communication, and about trust. We now had new family rules. Major decisions would be discussed together. Financial matters would be transparent, and most importantly, we would never let outside influences come between us again. Our weekly family dinners had taken on new meaning. They weren't just meals, they were affirmations of our commitment to each other, celebrations of the family bonds that had been tested but not broken. As I look back on that terrible text message and the 99 missed calls that followed, I'm reminded of something my mother used to say: "Love doesn't guarantee protection from life's storms, but it does guarantee you'll never face them alone." That's the wisdom I want to share with you today. When something feels wrong in your family relationships, trust your instincts. One phone call to the right person changed everything for us. One moment of refusing to simply accept what seemed unacceptable saved my family from disaster. Have you ever experienced a moment when trusting your gut about a family situation made all the difference? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story touched you or might help someone you know, please subscribe, and share it with them. Your support helps more families learn these important lessons before they face similar challenges. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, in family relationships, sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to give up, even when it seems like you've been asked to walk away. Sometimes holding on in the right way and for the right reasons is exactly what's needed most.